Tariffs. It's what's for dinner. Or at least it's going to impact the cost of dinner and hard goods and a number of other things in your life, most likely. But what about small business? Specifically, how is this going to impact your small business? I go ahead and get on another call with Neil Goldstein to go over the acute tariff impact that is going on across the United States, and also specifically how these tariff cost spikes can throw a business into chaos. We go over the impact on vendor relationships, the impact on cash flow, and also some real-world scenarios that can outline the hard choices you may need to be making very soon as a business owner. We also end on a note of hope, and we go into actions that you can take, such as a 13-week cash restructuring plan, and a few other things that you can do with your vendor relationships to keep you from having to decide if you're going to go into bankruptcy or some sort of restructuring. Whether you're watching this video now or a year from now, this video will continue to be topical because of the actions that happen with tariffs are relevant when they happen, whether they happen now or whether they happen later or don't happen later. These are actions that you can take and procedures you can put in place to make sure that you're going to be okay. Be sure that you are subscribed so you never miss an episode, and with that, let's go on to the conversation. So today, we're going to talk about tariffs, and if there is one thing that is very big in the news, it is currently the year of our Lord 2025, May 15th. So this is a very hot topic in the news right now. But for someone, let's say, who is just now starting their research on tariffs, can you just from a business perspective break down what they are and how they impact this world?
Isaac, tariffs are another form of a price increase to a company. Companies increase their prices because they give employees raises, their rent goes up per lease agreements, their insurance rates go up, and the company takes all of these increases into account and reorganizes their company and price structure to sell to their customers to continue to make money. The difference is a tariff was unforeseen, unnecessary, and arbitrary. It also came in the middle of business transactions. For example, let's say that a company ordered 1,000 coffee cups to sell to their customers from China. The original contract was for $1 per cup. So under normal circumstances, the cups land, they're cleared through customs, delivered to the business, who then ships it to customers. And let's say they charged $1.50, so they made 50 cents per cup. But while this transaction was linear, which means it was in effect, all of a sudden a price increase came of, let's say, 50%, which they called it a tariff, which is, again, just a price increase. Now when the goods land, the coffee cups land, the price, instead of being $1, is $1.50. What this means to the company is that they now are going to make zero money if they, in fact, sell to their customer at $1.50.
And that is one distinction I wanted to draw at the beginning of this conversation. And correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but it sounds like tariffs are part of price increases. And a lot of what we talk about today really pertains to just a company struggling with price increasing in general. It could be tariffs, it could be inflation, it could be, like you said, just rent going up or whatever an unforeseen expense could be. Is that correct?
That is very correct. You're right on target. It's a price increase that was unplanned for, and again, arbitrary. So certain industries benefited, certain industries got punished. So for now, the business doesn't know how to react to these changes. Will they stay? Will they go away? Will their customers be on board to pay more money? Will the company have to absorb the loss? These are very, very, very unsure times for a company, Isaac.
What are you seeing happening in the market right now as a result of the tariffs?
Companies have two significant issues, one immediate and one long range. The immediate issue is what to do with the goods that are coming in that are going to increase their cost. What should they do with their customers? If, in the example of the coffee cups, will they in fact sell 1,000 cups? If they go back to their customers and ask for a price increase, will the customers say no? The immediate problem is also that the additional money that they have to outlay when the goods arrive at the port. The long-term situation is if a company's been in business many years and their standard customary order has been for 1,000 coffee cups, what should they do in the future? Should they order 500, 1,000? What will the price be? This uncertainty causes companies to retract and have great difficulty in planning for the future.
We've talked a number of times off camera where you've broken down for me how cash flow is the lifeblood of a business. You follow the cash, you see what kind of health the business is in and how it operates. What is this doing for cash flow right now?
Immediately, if a company takes the goods that are coming in from offshore, the tariffs have to be paid at that time or the goods will not be released. So there's an immediate drain on cash flow. And the difficulty is, will the company get back that money from sales to customers? That is a very difficult question to answer because the price increases are so negative to both the company and their customer. It allows the customer to say, no, I don't want to receive the goods and I'm not paying for them. Yet the company has already advanced and paid for the duty, the tariffs, and all other costs to receive the goods.
Do you see this impacting, I want to say, parallel industries like the banking industry or like getting a loan? How does this impact people who normally have additional revenue streams or sources whenever they're needing to solve a cash problem?
Well, Isaac, would you make a loan to a company that doesn't know what their revenue is going to be like?
Negative.
No, I wouldn't. And banks have to protect themselves in this case. So with the tariffs, they might ask a company to supply them with updated financial information, maybe a projection of future sales, maybe a cash flow, a 13-week cash flow that would allow the bank to see their position on getting paid back on a loan. And a new loan, I don't think banks will be giving those out anytime soon like they did in the past. I think banks will wait to see the effects of the tariffs on companies and then take a position thereafter.
Follow-up question to that, which we already did a conversation about MCA loans, and I'll link that down in the bottom of the show notes for this when it comes out. But MCA loans, do you see more people going that route right now?
If they don't know the adverse effects of an MCA, I would say most definitely. So let's take an example where a company needs money for payroll, as we discussed previously. Where are they going to go? Let's say they go to their conventional lender, a bank, and they say, hey, I've used up all my line of credit. Can I get an extension? I don't think the bank will say yes without an immense amount of paperwork to validate that the loan could be paid back. If the company is in a dire situation, they will take an MCA loan.
And again, to anyone who's listening and confused at the concern in my voice over that topic, Neil did a great breakdown for us on MCA, and then you can go watch that because I don't want to take the whole time recapping everything he said, but give me some hope. Tell me about the future. Is there any end that we see to the tariff issue turning around or ending, or are we going to be dealing with this for a while?
We have to be dealing with this for a while because reports about new shipments coming into the port in LA were there was 0 boats.
Wow.
So even if the tariffs end tomorrow, they will be weeks and months before product will be manufactured, completed, put on a boat, and received in the US. So the company should be prepared for shortages and immense upheaval in their cash flow. What they can do immediately is start that 13-week cash flow and live with it every day to see the changes that are taking place because cash is king. It's always been king. In certain times like these, cash is the most important thing a company can protect. So it may have to do layoffs. It may have to slow down on any advance. It may have to slow down on any new projects. In the turnaround world, which I've been in for many, many years, there's one word that describes what companies should do, and that word is no. Anytime somebody asks to spend money, the answer is no. There should be significant and overwhelming evidence for the company to reverse the no to a yes.
That's really good advice. I actually just wrote down 13-week cash flow. We need to make that a video later too.
Oh, yes. In fact, what I do when I run companies is I have a 13-week cash flow, but I also have a weekly cash flow, Monday to Friday. It begins with how much cash I have in the bank, how much I'm expecting in, and what my cash requirements are for the week. And as we discussed in previous episodes, if a company is expecting money in and it isn't received on the day intended, all the company has to do is look down to the bottom of the schedule, the 13-week cash flow, and see who among those creditors is not getting paid. And I would highly recommend that as payments get late, the company doesn't hide, but calls the creditor and says, hey, I'm running slow. I will pay you very soon. I cannot tell you the advantages of doing that because they are so great and I can't explain it. I've done it my whole career, and creditors are very, very, very appreciative of that phone call.
Let me play devil's advocate to that just for a second. Let's say that I am a business who I'm in over my head as far as the debt that I have, be it MCA or something else, and the cash flow just isn't there. What are the chances that I'm going to lose my business, be it in a tariff world or just a over-leveraged kind of position?
It's hard to say because I've dealt with over 110 different companies, and each situation is different. But so let me generalize.
Sure.
Companies make mistakes, and here's an example of one that they probably wouldn't think about being negative, and it deals with making small payments. So they owe a creditor $10,000 and they can't pay the $10,000. So they send $500 or $750. And they think this will alleviate the pressure on the company and make the creditor happy. But it doesn't work that way. Because if you figure out they do this 10 times, they've given out $5,000. That $5,000 could have gone to one creditor and made them happy. Also, the creditor who's owed $10,000 and receives $500 could look at it and say, okay, I got $500. Now they still owe $9,500. That wasn't a market improvement on my position. So companies should look at payments and decide which of their vendors or creditors fall into an A category. An A category is described as essential to the company's future. So what they should do is take their vendors and break them down into categories A, B, and C. A, crucial to the company. Without them, the company cannot continue. B, vendors and creditors that are important to the company, but not to the same extent as the A group. And C, well, I'm sorry to say, but the company will survive without this group. And when it comes to the 13-week cash flow, break down the creditors into these three groups. When money is available, pay A first, B second, C third. Now, before you ask the question, I'll ask it for you. Well, what happens if I don't pay and people sue? I knew you were going to ask that. Well, only because it happens. This is life in business. So think about it from the perspective that the company, if it paid all of C and not A, the company's out of business. That's the perspective to follow. So I'd rather deal with a potential lawsuit and deal with it later, but understand and be comfortable that the company will continue. Now, how do we deal with B's and C's? Because I don't want to leave an open item of what to do and just allow and just say that it's okay to be sued. Well, let's come back to those small payments. If a company were to make small payments, it doesn't necessarily satisfy a creditor or vendor. So if a company makes fewer small payments, they'll have enough cash to pay one creditor or one vendor more money. So when the creditor vendor starts to make noise about getting paid or a lawsuit begins, then the company can take $4,000, $5,000, make a payment, and that will hold off the creditor for at least 60 days, in my opinion. And you play the game of almost leapfrog. I'm not paying vendor A in 1 month. I'll pay them in month 3 and 5 and 7. I'll pay B 2, 4, and 6. It works, I promise.
This almost sounds like corporate Dave Ramsey, where it's that snowball effect that he likes to talk about, where splitting it up to where then you refocus where the cash goes and you make a lot of people or a lot of debt disappear.
Exactly. You know, in the turnaround world, it's survival. And I will give a tremendous amount of credit to anybody who's in business. I've witnessed many, many, many instances of pure survival by these business owners. They can do it. They're smart. They just need a little guidance and some support. Support not only in giving them confidence that they're doing the right thing, but helping them through the process, say, of creating a 13-week cash flow or dealing with an honorary creditor with phone calls and communication. Once they know how to do this, they'll survive.
So let me give you some pushback, because I think the practicality of your solution is there, but someone's going to find this conversation and they're going to be at their wit's end, or they're actually going to be so far behind where they don't see where the cash flow could make sense, whether it's really there or not. What options are left to save a company in that kind of situation?
Isaac, this is mostly what I do. And we begin with the two major options: an out-of-court restructuring and an in-court restructuring. People know it as a bankruptcy. A bankruptcy should be the last option, because you can try an out-of-court settlement first and be prepared, if it doesn't work, to file bankruptcy. But you can't do it the other way. Once you file bankruptcy is your only method going forward. So begin with an out-of-court restructuring.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many professionals called chief restructuring officers, CROs, that can help. And what is entailed in an out-of-court restructuring is just how it sounds: restructure the company's debt and cash flow. So what happens is the company has a X amount of money available to pay its creditors, vendors, etc. The use of that money becomes important because we just discussed A, B, and C type creditors, vendors. Well, the most important is to take care of the A's. So all of the money goes there. So what an out-of-court restructuring does is it says to those who are not getting paid that we need some help from you, help in the form of being patient to get paid. So the 13-week cash flow, which we discussed, then includes this restructuring of A, B, and C.
So I don't hear people talk about this one as much when it comes to corporate financial difficulties. It seems everything goes right into bankruptcy. So this, first off, sounds like really good news. And I want to ask, what are the pros? What are the cons? What is it about this that has it not talked about as much in the industry?
Control, Isaac. One word, control. We'll get to bankruptcy, I believe, in this conversation. But in an out-of-court restructuring, the company maintains control over all parts of its company. There is no oversight. So it could make any decision it wants, but in bankruptcy, that's not the case. So the company now can go back with its cash flow and with help and renegotiate loans, renegotiate payments to vendors, and restructure the company without any oversight by a court.
What are the drawbacks of going with this route?
The drawbacks are you're beginning with a debt. You're beginning with creditors who have been disappointed. Now, who disappointed them? Management of the company. So why should any of these creditors now place faith in the people that disappointed them? That's the major hurdle. Because chances are the companies didn't need a structured restructuring plan. The companies didn't need a formal restructuring plan or the engagement of a CRO. They do it every day. When they didn't have money, they paid their bills late. But in a real restructuring position and in a situation where they need help from creditors, sometimes that credibility is not there. And vendors are going to say, sorry, I've been disappointed one too many times. That's why a CRO is needed, because creditors and vendors value the effort that a CRO brings. It's honest and it has formats which, when presented to creditors and vendors, is reliable.
So having that CRO might be the key to maintaining those relationships with those vendors that keep the business alive.
It does in almost every case, because as a CRO, I talk to the creditors differently. I've learned after successes and failures too, what, say, a bank is looking for. It's not the same as what a vendor is looking for. In a bank situation, there are committees that make decisions. And remember, many banks do billions of dollars of business, and your loan may be $2 million, which is a lot of money to you, meaning the company. But $2 million on billions, the bank will handle it differently. For example, also, the bank will move the loan of a company into what they call the special assets division, which in the old days was called the workout. Now, what is the job of the workout department in a bank? It is to get the most amount of money from the company, and then if anything is left over, they write it off. Banks don't want to take over the business. They don't want to have to take over the assets and sell those. They just want to deal with money. They don't want to pay legal fees. But with a vendor knows that there are three essential parts to their loss. They would lose the amount of money that is already on the books. They would lose future business that would come from a company if they didn't stay in business. And their chances are, in many situations, the vendor is a manufacturer who has put goods into work for a company, and only that company could use them. So there are three losses for a vendor. They are easier to work with.
I find it refreshing to hear that everyone has a vested interest in you succeeding rather than you failing. From what I'm hearing, is that the optimal outcome, not just for you, but also for them.
Exactly. All the words that are used in conversations with creditors are essential. For example, anything that gives doubt to a bank that you may not pay may force them into calling in their loan and shutting the company down. Any words used to a vendor that you may not be paying them will immediately shut down a line of credit, and there goes the business. So, for example, what the bank wants to hear is, you're going to get paid, we're working on a plan, or here is the plan. What a vendor wants to hear is the same thing. You're going to get paid, we're staying in business, we have a good future together. Now, that isn't sufficient enough. There are conversations that fall below that topic sentence, which is the crucial part of whether a company can succeed in an out-of-court restructuring.
When does it make more sense to pursue a bankruptcy rather than a restructuring?
Excellent question, Isaac. It goes along with what we were just discussing. If the out-of-court restructuring plan is not working, the bankruptcy comes into play because most people think about bankruptcy as something negative. It isn't. It can save a company because, in the example where the company goes to its 5 critical vendors and describes the restructuring plan it intends to put in place, and 3 of the vendors go along with it and 2 don't, then the company can evaluate its position, whether it can stay in business with 3 of the 5 critical vendors, replace the 2 that didn't want to continue, and if it can't, then bankruptcy is an option, because in bankruptcy, the law states that once these 5 vendors are deemed to be critical vendors, they must continue to supply the company as they had prior to bankruptcy. That's why bankruptcy has many, many, many benefits. We can go through the benefits and the negatives, the detriments, but there are many benefits in keeping the company solvent and in business.
And I think it'd be appropriate for us to probably do another conversation like this where we do a deep dive into the pros and cons of just the bankruptcy option. But I did want to ask, apart from it being a legal Rubicon of sorts, because you said before you can't go back from starting a bankruptcy, are there any other reasons as to why this needs to be the last resort?
A bankruptcy is an extremely difficult process for the average business owner not only to understand, but comprehend and then live through. Because think about it. They are now telling a host of creditors they're not going to pay, that whatever was owed as of the date of the filing of bankruptcy, that's going to be taken care of at some point in the future, at most likely a significant reduction. Many of the bankruptcies I work on, the unsecured creditors, meaning those that don't have security, such as being a loan or a piece of equipment, they might get 10% on the dollar. If a creditor is owed $200,000, they may get $20,000. And worse, it's payable over 5 years. So for the creditor, they are upset. For the company, they just saved $180,000 that they don't have to pay. And they get to pay it out over 60 months, 5 years. Some of the benefits of bankruptcy. But again, on the other side, the vendor now becomes more reluctant to deal with the company after bankruptcy.
Going back to where this conversation started with the tariffs, have you ever seen a company need to go into, be it a restructuring or bankruptcy, as a result of unforeseen tariffs?
Many companies went into bankruptcy because of COVID. Many went in because of the 2008 real estate debacle or the 2000 dot-com bubble. The tariffs are going to affect so many companies differently that I don't think that the option of out-of-court restructuring will be as easily available as it was in the future. In the COVID, the government was supporting companies with PPP loans, EIDL loans. So that staved off many of the potential bankruptcies. In the real estate debacle, as I said, in 2008, it only affected one industry. In the dot-com, it affected a lot of people in the stock market. But here, this is a pervasive negative situation. And again, there was no time to plan. One day, it was done. And again, let's go back to the goods that were on the water.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, that coffee cup that we said was $1, now it's $1.50. How does a company plan for that? It can plan, as we said, for a payroll. When December comes and they give out bonuses, the company knows what they're doing before. Same with insurance and same with rent. It's a lease. But this was arbitrary. The impact of this will be felt for years to come, even if it reverses itself tomorrow. I don't want to get into the geopolitical part of this, but once the tariffs are put in, other countries that we get goods from are now looking to supply other countries with the same goods because there's more of a stable political climate there.
So let's say whether it's tomorrow or whether it's a year from now or whether it's 50 years from now, what are the signs that I need to get really serious about either a restructuring or even a bankruptcy to save my business?
Isaac, we went through this, and I can't impress upon a business owner to take advantage of a CRO, or if they're capable, do the 13-week cash flow, do the weekly cash flow, do a projection. But I'll tell you what failure occurred in many of my clients. They were slow to react. They procrastinated, and they didn't make the necessary changes in a timely manner. And many of my clients were such good people, they didn't want to lay off employees. So they kept employees, they kept commitments that they shouldn't have, and they admitted it afterwards. I kept the employees too long, I did this, I did that. And remember, in bankruptcy, any contract could be accepted or rejected. Let's say a company has a 50,000 square foot warehouse. And right now, business has been slow for years, and this tariff crisis comes up, and they really only need about 20,000 square feet. They're going to be paying on 50,000 square feet. In a bankruptcy, they could reject the contract, and they could move to a 20,000 square foot warehouse. Let's say they have a large contract with a computer consulting firm, and they're not getting their worth, but the contract has 3 more years on it. Go into bankruptcy, reject it. That's why the CRO could help immensely. They look at out-of-court restructuring plans and at the same time are knowledgeable about bankruptcy. So they would put the two together and say, well, in an out-of-court, we benefit this way. In a bankruptcy, we benefit this way. For the company to survive, it would need to do the following.
Well, Neil, I appreciate your time coming on, again, sharing with us some of the insights of what business owners really need to know in order to stay afloat in some of these times. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you if they have questions?
My website is elementarybusiness.com. My email is Neil, Neil, @elementarybusiness.com. And as you could see on the video, I'm not a young person. I am a senior. I've done very well in my career. I do a lot of volunteer work. And if anybody wants to contact me and ask me a question, I am free. There'll be no charge. I would love to see people get through the tariffs and stay in business, continue to hire people, continue to pay people, and succeed. And again, do not procrastinate. Make a decision, and as hard as it is, in closing, I will say, think about this, and I tell this to my clients. As nice a person as you want to be, and keeping an extra person on payroll, if the company doesn't succeed, think about the number of people that are going to be impacted if the company doesn't stay in business. So you might have to get rid of 1 or 2, but save 15.
If you have questions about how tariffs are going to impact your business and the steps you need to take to be prepared, go ahead and feel free to set up a time to talk. You can always reach out, send us a question via email or using the links down in the show notes below, or just give us a call. The number is 903-866-6229. That's 903-8666-229. Remember, the first call is always free, and we are more than happy to have a conversation and set up an appointment with Neil. Be sure you subscribe and give us a like, and with that, we will see you next time.